All right, good evening, members of council, administration, and certainly welcome to our meeting this evening. I will begin by roll call. All members of council are present this evening, and we have no closed meeting to report out this evening. And we will start with a moment of silence, and please rise for the national anthem. All right, we'll begin with our land acknowledgement this evening. We acknowledge that we are on the land surrounded by water, originally inhabited by the indigenous peoples who have traveled this area since time immemorial. This territory is within the lands honored by the Wampum Treaties and agreements between the Anishinaabe, the Haudenosaunee, Lenni, Lenape, and allied nations to peacefully share and care for the resources around the Great Lakes. Specifically, we would like to acknowledge the presence of the Three Fires Confederacy, the Ojibwe, Ottawa, Potawatomi, and Huron-Wendat peoples. We are dedicated to honoring Indigenous history and culture while remaining committed to moving forward respectfully with all First Nations, Inuit, and Métis. To the members, any disclosure of pecuniary interest on the agenda is presented to you this evening. Hearing none, we'll have that duly noted. We'll go to the minutes of the regular council meeting of July 12th, the public council minutes of July 12th, the South Talbot Road Drain East and 12th Line Drain, and the public council minutes of July 12th, 2022, Sullivan Creek Drain. If I could have a motion on those minutes, Deputy Mayor Bichetti, Council Tonio. Any errors or omission on those minutes as presented? Hearing none, all in favor? Opposed, if any, that is carried. Supplementary. We do have a supplementary agenda this evening. Yes, Councillor Houston moves and supported by Councillor Jobin. All in favor? Opposed, that's carried. And so we'll move on to delegations. Tecumseh 100th anniversary presentation. All right, members of council, we do have some gifts for members of council, and we certainly want to present that to each and every one of you for your involvement over the 4-day weekend, and certainly the success of this, our 100th anniversary. A lot of it was dependent on each and every one of you who really came out and celebrated and helped celebrate our community in such a wonderful fashion. And every event that we actually were involved with, from from the Canada Day celebration right up through the final evening at Lesueur. Well attended, and it's because of the great leadership, from each and every one of you who gave so much of your time and so forth. And I certainly want to extend my thanks as well to Councillor Tonio for his participation on the committee as well. But again, we could not be as successful as each and every one of you who gave so much of your time that weekend. And I'd be remiss if I didn't, thank administration as well, because I'm going to do it again because, Christina and Brett and Carrie before that and Mackenzie. And I hate to try to call out names because you always tend to forget folks, but what a tremendous amount of work all of you have put in and to help us. I've always said, for a politician to get through life, it's always make me look good and no surprises. Well, by gosh, you made us look good and there were no surprises. So, from me to you and certainly on behalf of all of us around the table, thank you for that and so forth. But please, I might as well start and I start with the deputy mayor. Yeah, thank you very much.
Thank you. Well done. Your task force there with great leadership.
Councillor Bill Altenhoff.
Mr. Mayor, thanks to you, administration, everyone else. It really has to go back to all the residents who assisted so much. Thank you very much.
Thank you. You're welcome. Thank you. Councillor Tonio.
Sir. Your leadership, great job.
You too. Thank you.
Councillor Houston.
Councillor Houston. Thank you. Last but not least, Councillor Jobin.
Thanks so much. Thanks. It went well. And your worship, for you as the head of the task force and the head of this fabulous group, your gift, sir.
Well, thank you. Thank you very much. Well, once again, I just want to thank everyone and let's say that whoever's around this horseshoe in 100 years from now, they've got big shoes to fill. So with that, thank you again, everyone. And most importantly, thank you to Tecumseh. Thank you for coming out and celebrating your wonderful community and all the volunteers that were involved in the committee, the task force. You couldn't ask for nicer weather. You couldn't ask for, a better setup and clockwork. And most importantly, I think it was a huge eye opener for all of us when we really bonded with our Indigenous population over the course of the 4 days and learned so much. And we're seeing, what's happening right now with the Pope visiting Canada and meeting with our Indigenous population and so forth. And I just want to say that this has been a great opportunity for us to really honor our namesake, Tecumseh, in the past 4 days. So thank you with that. All right. Communications, we've only got 2 pieces of communications members of council deal with, items 1 and 2. If I could have a motion to receive. Councillor Houston, Councillor Altenhoff, on those, all in favor? Opposed, if any, that is carried. No communications of action to be required. We'll move, no committee minutes, but we do have reports. And our first report today is from our development services. It's DS 2022-33. That's the Tecumseh Transit Service Bus Stop Advertising Proposal. And I would surmise it's Mr. Jeffries that will be presenting that report.
You're correct. Thank you, Mr. Mayor, and good evening, members of council. This report is recommending the entering into of an agreement with Creative Outdoor Advertising, or COA for short, regarding the installation of municipal transit stop benches that can accommodate advertising space. COA would own and maintain the benches at no cost to the town, and the town would receive a small portion of the advertising revenue that's solicited by COA. They currently provide the service to a number of municipalities, including some that are within this region. And we've reached out to them and they've indicated that there's a high level of satisfaction with the program. As you know, Tecumseh Transit Service recently converted from a fixed route to an on-demand service as part of a pilot project, but it maintained the network of 43 existing stops, and roughly a quarter of these stops have benches. So there are quite a few that don't have benches right now. So engaging the services of CO or COA would offer an opportunity to increase the number of transit stop benches while providing a new revenue stream for the town. And the attachment that you see before you shows the stops that are affected by this program. There's actually about 18 stops, and they're indicated in blue and green. And the blue denotes stops that are without an existing bench that are recommended for an advertising bench. The green are stops where there's an existing bench that we're recommending be converted to an advertising bench. And then the red are stops where we're not recommending this advertising program for now. And the benches that are removed from the green category, we will look to relocate them at stops that are indicated in red, where we feel they're appropriate. In determining where to suggest these stops, we used 3 locational criteria, and that's that they be on an arterial collector road or on a local road in the vicinity of a significant community, park or facility, regardless of the zoning, within areas zoned commercial, and then that these stops all have existing sidewalk access for OADA purposes. I'll just review the core provisions of the agreement with council. Beginning with installation and maintenance, COA will install the benches and a cement mounting pad if necessary at COA's expense, and subject to the town's approval. They will maintain ownership of the bench, and again, will be responsible for the maintenance throughout the program. Snow removal will be the responsibility of the town, clearing the snow and salting around the benches as part of the routine snow clearing and maintenance program. And that can be done within the budget for this year. COA would provide limited support by clearing fallen snow when they make their scheduled bi-weekly visits. So they'll come around once every 2 weeks and investigate the stops to make sure that there's been no vandalism, that they're in proper condition, and then make any repairs and do any maintenance that's necessary. In terms of revenue, the town would receive 5% of the revenue from the advertising, which amounts to a total of approximately $1,500 per year. The advertising is regulated so that it's aesthetically pleasing and it fits into the surroundings. It has to comply with the Human Rights Code and the Canadian Code of Advertising. And there are a number of additional criteria in the agreement. And whether the advertising meets those criteria is up to the determination of the transit coordinator. The term of the agreement is for 10 years. And at the end of that 10 years, we can either extend that or COA will remove its benches and restore the site to the pre-installation condition. We wanted to point out to council that the current sign bylaw in the town establishes that off-site signs and signs on town property are prohibited, but there's an exemption clause that council can enact, and that's through agreement, and they may permit any sign within the town. So if council authorizes the agreement that we're recommending, authorizes entering into the agreement that we're recommending tonight, we feel that that would achieve that clause in the sign bylaw. And because the advertising is small scale in nature, there are public benefits of having more benches at the transit stops. and that this is becoming fairly commonplace in municipalities across North America, we believe that this is a reasonable and appropriate exemption. So to conclude, this program would enable us to enhance the transit ridership experience. It'll generate some marginal revenue for the town. And given the positive experience that other municipalities have had with the program, we're recommending, Mr. Mayor, that the report DS 2022-33 entitled Tecumseh Transit Service Bus Stop Bench Advertising Proposal Agreement with Creative Outdoor Advertising be received, and that a bylaw authorizing the execution of the Bench Press Limited OA Creative Outdoor Advertising License Agreement satisfactory in the form to the town solicitor, which allows for the introduction of transit stop benches that can accommodate advertising space, be adopted. Those are my comments, Mr. Mayor. I'm available for any questions that council may have.
All right, thank you very much, Mr. Jeffries. Any questions or comments in the report? Deputy Mayor Buchetti.
Thank you, through your manner. Thank you, Mr. Jeffrey, for the report. I know this was a long one we were waiting for, but with COVID and all the delays we've had, it wasn't right a priority at the time, but it's nice to see here this evening. My question for you is the stops in total in terms of the benches. Do you have a total number? It would be the blue and the green, I believe you said.
Yeah, it's actually 18 stops, and there could be more as the transit system evolves, and based on whether we feel that the stops are appropriate according to the locational criteria that I mentioned in the report. We might, if we had a stop, we'll consider whether that's appropriate for advertising. So right now we're looking at 18 candidate stops.
Okay, so that's approximately, in terms of investment, about $30,000-$40,000 worth of work that COA is invested in the community there. My second follow-up question would be, in terms of bus stops, was there discussion, does it have to be a bus stop? I'm looking at our CIP in Main Street where people, even along Riverside with Lakewood ice cream and Slinkies, Main Street, people are going about walking, pedestrian, where they could use the bench just to, if they're walking a couple blocks, they want to sit down and have a bite to eat or a treat. Does it have to be a bus stop per se as per the agreement, or is the town able to say, you know what, we can stick a few more here, assuming people are going to, walk the Main Street there?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, to the Deputy Mayor, this is exclusively pertaining to transit bus stops. The agreement is, however, we can communicate with a COA to determine whether there's opportunity for additional stops that we feel are appropriate throughout the town for this type of advertising. But it is exclusive to transit stop benches at the moment.
Okay, good. Yeah, if there's an opportunity that exists to fill in a gap or something that you think, it would be nice to have one or two more here. It doesn't hurt to ask, and but I get the program. I thank you very much for that. And I'll move the recommendation at the appropriate time.
All right, thank you, Deputy Mayor. Councillor Altenhoff.
Thank you, Worship. And through you to Mr. Jeffries, I'm sorry if I'm being a little bit too troublesome here, but I just wanted to confirm, because when I looked at some of the icons on the map that were displayed, if you actually zoom in to a higher level, it seems that there's some that are kind of superimposed on others. And I just want to make sure, for example, the icon that's presented at Riverside and Arlington, it looks, if you zoom in, I zoomed to about a 400% level. There appears to be a blue and then what appears to be a very obvious red advertising bench not recommended. I just want to confirm that these, what I'll refer to as obvious, are the ones that are presented, because I noticed the number of icons where there were kind of red, blue, is what we are seeing what it's going to be. I mean, we would just hate to see one thing and then it switched to the other. And if you zoom in to the PDF, I'm sure you'll be able to see it. But I just want to make sure we're voting on what we see here, and there'll be no options to kind of switch it or change it any which way through. Thank you.
Through you, Mr. Mayor.
Yep.
I noted that too. I'm not sure if that was just a graphical mistake, but it's the one that's on top, the red. In that case, it's the red. It's not being recommended for that location. There's also one on Les Bronze at the north end of the Little River that seems to have that same display with just a tinted blue underneath it. It's red as well. There is one that I'd like to point out to council that we'd be considering for a bench, a new advertising bench, which I believe should be blue, and that's on the west side of Southfield Road, just south of Tecumseh by the Tim Hortons. That's one we would consider for a new advertising bench.
Yeah, that would make sense.
Yeah.
Okay. Any further questions? Go ahead, Councilor Houston.
No, I'm happy to move or second the report.
Okay, so moved by Deputy Mayor Buchetti, supported Councilor Houston to recommend the report. All in favor? Opposed? That is carried. Thank you. All right, our next is the zoning bylaw amendment 205 to 227 L'Esperance Road, results of public meeting and final recommendations. Mr. Jeffries?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. If we can go to attachment 1, to make reference to that, earlier this year, a zoning bylaw amendment was filed for 0.38 hectare parcel of land located on the southwest corner of L'Esperance Road and Dillon Drive. And you can see it there outlined in red on this attachment. And that represents the municipal address is 205, 211, and 227. And the purpose of the zoning bylaw amendment was to facilitate the redevelopment of the subject property for 4 2.5-story 6-unit dwellings. And they're depicted on attachments 2, 3A, and 3B. Beginning with attachment 2, which shows the site plan. You can see the 4 6-unit dwellings there with parking to the west. And they've got pedestrian access to L'Esperance Road. There's a common area between the units in the middle of the property. And then on attachment 3A, you see our artistic renderings of the proposed development. The top one is a bird's eye view looking east towards L'Esperance Road. The bottom one is from L'Esperance Road looking at the buildings from the front. And then on 3B, there's 2 different perspectives. That's looking at the rear facades of the building from the parking area, basically. And then that's the central amenity area on the bottom. So there was a public meeting held on June 28th of this year, at which a number of issues were raised, and they were largely addressed at the public meeting. The purpose of this report is to just comment on those issues that remain somewhat outstanding. And there are only 2. The first one dealt with compatibility and site design. If we can go back to attachment 2, the concern was raised that it's not compatible with surrounding areas. And you've heard us mention a number of these intensification and infill proposals that being compatible doesn't mean being the same as or even similar to. It means that they can exist together in harmony. And generally speaking, residential development is compatible with other residential development. And having multi-unit residential development adjacent low density single unit detached development is a built form that is very common. It's a land use mix that exists throughout the town. And in fact, it exists just to the south of this subject property. So in that very block, compatibility, however, can be enhanced by addressing differences in scale and massing of abutting residential properties through building orientation, through the positioning of the building, site design, buffering, landscaping, and appropriate setbacks, all of which have been addressed by this proposal. We've also looked at this proposal in the context of section 318 of the town's official plan, which is entitled Land Use Compatibility. And in there are a number of matters that need to be addressed, and we feel that they've addressed through this proposal each one of those matters. And site design will be secured through the site plan control process. The second issue that was raised concerned the parking lot, and its a relative location to the rear yards of the single unit dwellings to the west. And the concern was that there might be vehicles that travel into the rear yards of those buildings by accident. So that concern can be mitigated, we feel, quite effectively through this proposal. Again, this is a common design feature where you've got a parking lot that's adjacent to single unit residentials. This can be found throughout the municipality, but the parking lot will be delineated by a 6-inch barrier curbing. And there'll be a combination of landscaping and privacy fencing, including trees along the westerly lot limit. So the additional feature of this site, or its location, that increases or enhances the compatibility and the safety of this, is that there's a 3-meter, 10-foot municipal alley along the westerly lot line of the property, which adds additional separation and buffering. So we believe that the design is appropriate and safe. A planning policy analysis was provided in the previous reports to council, both when we requested the public meeting and at the public meeting. But just to provide a quick overview, the provincial policy statement and the county official plan indicate that the town should support and promote residential intensification and infill, which results in compact form, makes more efficient use of existing services, and offers a range of housing types and tenures to address the evolving market. The Tecumseh official plan, in terms of meeting it also includes those types of policies, and it conforms to the criteria established for high density development and meets the intent of the compatibility criteria that I just mentioned, as well as the urban design guidelines. So we strongly believe that this conforms to the Tecumseh official plan. The county official plan is consistent with the provincial policy statement. There's a section in the official plan that deals with amendment procedures, and it requires that a zoning bylaw amendment conform to the general intent and philosophy of the plan, be consistent with the PPS, that there's a need for the land for the proposed use, that it's compatible, that the infrastructure is able to accommodate it, and that the transportation system is able to accommodate it. And again, on all those fronts, this proposal satisfies those criteria. So again, to conclude, we believe that the proposed zoning bylaw amendment is consistent with the PPS, conforms to the county official plan, the town's official plan, and will result in appropriate development that is based on sound land use planning principles. Any detailed site design issues will be addressed through the required site plan control agreement. Mr. Mayor, we're recommending that a bylaw having the effect of amending the Tecumseh zoning bylaw 1746 by rezoning a 0.38 hectare parcel of land situated in the southwest corner of Les Moines Road and Dillon Drive intersection from residential zone 3 R3 to residential zone 3 R3-22 in order to facilitate the construction of a residential development consisting of 4 2.5 story 6-unit dwellings and establish site-specific lot, building, and yard provisions in keeping with Report DS 2022-34 be adopted. And those are my comments, Mr. Mayor, and I'd be happy to answer any questions that council may have.
All right, thank you very much, Mr. Jeffrey. Any questions or comments on the report? All right. Move the recommendation. Councillor Houston, do I have support? Councillor Jobin, thank you. Any further questions or comments? Hearing none. All in favor? Opposed, if any? That is carried.
Thank you.
All right, thank you, Mr. Jeffrey. Okay, we'll move on to legislative and clerk services, LCS 2022-27, the skate shop lease agreement, Tecumseh Arena. Madam Clerk.
Thank you. Sorry about that. We're all learning how to use the mics tonight. Thank you, Your Worship and members of council. The town has entered into agreements in the past for skate sharpening services at the arena, and it's a valued service in the community. The previous arrangement with the service provider was terminated as a result of the pandemic. Doug Sater approached the town to operate a skate sharpening service at the arena starting next month. Presented to you tonight is a 1-year lease agreement with the option to renew for 5 years. The motion reads as follows: that a 1-year lease agreement with AAA Profile Sharpening and its owner Douglas Sater commencing August 1st, 2022 and ending July 31st, 2023 at a monthly fee of $650 plus HST with the option to renew for 1 additional 5-year term upon providing 125 days notice to the town be approved, and that the mayor and clerk be authorized to execute the lease agreement between the town and AAA Profile Sharpening. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Any questions or comments on the report? Councilor Tonio?
I apologize. Did I hear you say 650 plus Gs or 350?
Through you, your worship, it's 350 plus HST.
Thank you. Thank you.
Questions or comments on the motion? Recommended Deputy Mayor Becchetti and support Councilor Jobin. All in favor? Opposed, if any? That is carried. Thank you. All right, our next is Public Works and Engineering Services. It's PWES 2022-36 Riverside Drive Multi-Use Trail. Tender results. Call upon Mr. Bartnick. Bring that report forward and recommendations.
Thank you, Your Worship, and good evening, everybody. I'm just going to summarize the report and as you indicated, Your Worship, run through the recommendations of the report as well. Council may remember earlier this year in January of 2022, we did receive approval for our 2022 PWES Capital Works projects that authorized administration to proceed with our projects this year, which also included the construction of the Riverside Drive multi-use trail. A few months later in March of 2022, we did provide an update to council on this project, which included a visual presentation of the trail alignment and outlined the next steps required to complete the project itself. Since March of this year, the project team has conducted additional meetings on site with adjacent landowners regarding structures in the right-of-way that need to be removed or relocated. The project team has finalized detailed design and the tender documents, and they've also coordinated utility relocations. Essex Power, MNSI, and Cogeco have been completed, with Bell starting shortly on their relocations as well. The project was tendered out, we do refer to this as tender call number 1. So it was advertised on June 10th of this year and closed on July 11th. I believe there was about 22 plan takers for the project, and no bids were received. So administration reached out to several local contractors to discuss the lack of interest, and it really boiled down to 3 different themes. Theme number 1 was timing. So a number of the contractors already had commitments for the year. Theme number 2 was project size and scope. The contractors identified a greater interest in larger sewer and road contracts. And it's my understanding the City of Windsor had a number of those larger contracts out during that same time period. And lastly, theme number 3 was the project environment itself. So given the high profile nature of this project, there was some uncertainty surrounding the level of efforts required around public relations throughout construction. So through those discussions, administration was led to believe that if the project was retendered, that a few bids would be submitted. So we did go out again. We had a tender call number 2, which was advertised July 8th and closed on July 14th. And the town did receive 1 bid from Pyricon Enterprises Incorporated, which unfortunately was significantly over budget. So the bid that we received was just under 2.76 million. And to put that into perspective, the total project budget, construction, engineering, utility relocates, we had budgeted 1.87 million. So when comparing the bid to the original construction budget of 1.43 million, the bid was 192% over. And when comparing it to the consultant's pre-tender construction estimate or updated estimate, factoring in inflation and increased market prices, their estimate was 1.67 million. So the bid was still significantly over at 165% over the pre-tender budget or pre-tender estimate. So a few other things to note. The town was successful in receiving 75% In receiving a grant, 75% of eligible cost to a maximum contribution of $750,000 through the Canada Community Revitalization Fund, or the CCRF. The CCRF is scheduled to end as of March 31st, 2023. So administration has reached out to CCR staff to discuss the town's challenges and the possibility of a program extension into the 2023 construction season. CCRF indicated that funding may be extended, but there really has nothing yet confirmed. Administration is also drafting a letter to be sent through the mayor's office to the minister to formally request an extension to this program. So the next steps moving forward, we have identified a number of options. So the first option is to negotiate with the single bidder. So administration would enter into negotiations with Puricon Enterprises, Inc. for a lower price that is closer to the pre-tender estimate provided by the town's consultants. And this would be in accordance with section 4.5 of the purchasing policy. The next option would be a CCRF program extension. So administration would also work with our contacts at CCRF, as well as our local MP, to lobby for an extension of the program beyond the March 2023 deadline. If successful, the town would look to tender the project in the fall of 2022, with construction to commence in the spring of 2023. And that also would be in accordance with section 4.4A of the purchasing policy. And lastly, another option would be direct negotiation. So in anticipation that the CCRF program may not be extended and that all the work still need to be completed by the current program deadline, administration would look to enter into negotiations with local contractors who may be willing and able to complete the works this year at a price a little bit closer to the pre-tender estimate. This will be completed following section 3.11C of the purchasing policy. And it is important to note that this option would only be necessary if negotiations with the current single bidder would fail. And that was highlighted through option 1. That would be the negotiations with Puricon Enterprises Incorporated. So moving forward, so administration will report back to council regarding the outcomes of these options. And the recommendations contained within the report before you tonight, that report PWES 2022 36 Riverside Drive multi-use trail tender results be received, and that the single tender received for the Riverside Drive multi-use trail project from Puricon Enterprise Inc. be rejected due to the bid being significantly over budget. And further, that administration be authorized to negotiate with Puricon Enterprises Inc. for a lower price that is closer to the pre-tender estimate provided by the town's consultant in accordance with section 4.5 of the town's purchasing policy. That concludes my presentation, and I am available for any questions. Thank you.
All right, thank you very much, Mr. Bartnick. Any questions or comments? Deputy Mayor?
Thank you, Your Worship. Through you to Phil, regarding the options that you laid out, I support the recommendations that's in our report tonight. I would just perhaps suggest if we could add a deadline in terms of when you negotiate, similar to real estate, you're purchasing a home and you have a buyer and a seller. If there's not a deadline of date, there's no motivation in either parties to show that this is a concern. So if they know, for example, takes place, then that becomes null and void. So I don't know if that would be worthwhile to add a deadline to that, so that not only yourself as administration, you're aware that August 31st would be the deadline, but also motivate Pura to sit down and meet with you, because if not, this could go on October, November, who calls the deadline? And so if there's a hard fact date, both parties will try to negotiate. And if it doesn't materialize, you can part ways and go on to the next options that you suggested this evening. So just a suggestion.
Mr. Bartnick, and I don't know if anything you want to just add to that, but
Yes, through you, your worship, and my apologies. I caught the first and the last half of that, but
I know that
it was-
we're neophytes on the new system now that it's our first meeting back and that, but the sense of it is basically, you're going to go into, we support the recommendation, or we support the recommendations, as the order falls. But if we're going to go into negotiations with the contractor on this one here, is to make sure that we have a timeline, like it's not like a forever negotiation, is basically over a period of time, and say, if there's no resolve, then basically, we cease negotiations.
Yes, and thank you, your worship. So we have had some initial discussions and advised of the report that was being brought forward here tonight with the contractor. So he is aware of the recommendations coming forward. We're also very cognizant of the tight timelines here that we have, not only with the grant funding program, but also with the construction season as well. So I think we're looking at about a 2-month construction season. And if we could come back to council on August 9th with further recommendations on these options themselves, it will put us in a position where construction would likely be able to commence early September, and then construction run through the fall while the asphalt plants are still open. So we're definitely aware of the tight timelines, not only for the program and construction, and our hope was to come to some sort of resolution here fairly quickly and report back to council by August 9th.
Should that be part of the motion then? No? Okay, so just.
No, I think it's going to come. I mean,
It'll come back,
obviously,
but then that way both parties know, look, August
Yeah.
9th, we're going to council. Let's, it's make it or break it type thing. Thank you.
yep.
That was my point.
No,
Okay.
I think administration is quite aware that it's the marching on. But thank you for suddenly bringing that up. Any further questions or comments? Yes, Councillor Uppenhoff, please.
Thank you, Worship, and through you to administration and council. I wish to thank administration for this report regarding the multi-use trail, and with the further details on the significant costing of this project, far greater than our original expectations. I wish to once again express my concern for this project. We will get what we pay for, and if we try to trim costs here and there, our residents and users will be negatively impacted. Let's not question that at all. We've probably all experienced that in our lives. Okay. I personally continue to extensively use Riverside Drive almost on a probably a 3 to 4 times a week basis as a road cyclist, where I am traveling on that last 6 inches of the of Riverside Drive, where that white painted line exists. And I believe my perspective on the view of this region is unique compared to all of you. As I cycle on this road, I regret the significant green space that will be lost for a region of gray space that exists and could be used for the project. Additionally, a significant population would not be able to use the proposed trail given the limitations on road cyclist users. Given those significant escalating costs of the project and the impact to the green space, appropriate use for all cyclists, walkers, and users, I would encourage council to reconsider. We will get what we pay for. And if we try to trim costs, if we try to negotiate, we will get probably something less than what we envision. I firmly believe that we can do better on this project for our residents and those outside of our town who will use this infrastructure. I'm also confident that our residents would be willing to endure a higher project cost to obtain a more pristine outcome than what is currently proposed and was left as an option, albeit a different option that was selected by council previously presented by the town's consultants. So I leave that point there. I will not be supporting this because we will get what we pay for. And that trail has the opportunity to be a very, very beautiful trail. Far better than I think what is currently proposed. Thank you.
Okay, I would say that we're probably 2 weeks early on that discussion. You know, let's have administration first. Let's see what we can do to make sure that I certainly don't disagree with your comments. We want to make sure that we get a proper end product in that regards. But I think we're just about 2 weeks, a little premature on that discussion. So hoping, you know, that on August the 9th, because I don't believe the intent is to reduce what we have agreed upon. I totally agree to that point. It's a matter of let's go and negotiate in terms a better price to get what the end result that we all agreed upon early on. So I think this is what we're trying to achieve. And then let's give administration that opportunity to be able to achieve that. And then we'll have a more in-depth discussion on August the 9th. Go ahead.
Thank you, Worship. And through you, again, my concerns are with that option that currently exists. And I know that the focus will be on that option that has been selected. Again, I reiterate the point that another option was presented by the town's consultant, albeit far more expensive than what was, again, originally intended. But again, giving these escalating costs, you know, let's do our best. While I do appreciate that this is trying to bring it back to administration to try to refocus it, my concern again is that the option that we're still looking at is, I don't think, the best one. Thank you.
Okay, fair enough. We'll certainly have let's give it a couple of weeks and we'll have that discussion more in depth at that time. Any further questions or comments on certainly on the report? Recommendation before you from administration? Councilor Houston, move the report. And do I have support? Councilor Tonio, thank you. On the motion, all in favor? Opposed, if any? That motion carries. Thank you. Madam Clerk, I think we got bylaws now.
Thank you, Your Worship. We have 6 bylaws presented for council this evening. We have bylaw number 55, authorizing an execution of the agreement between the town and AAA Profile Sharpening. Bylaw number 56, being a bylaw to fill the vacancy of the office of the member of council, Ward 1, to Doug Petrie. Bylaw number 57 is the ZBA bylaw for the 205 to 227 Les Bronze Road. Bylaw number 58, being a bylaw to delegate certain authorities during lame duck council period for the 2022 municipal election. Bylaw number 59 is being a bylaw to amend the administration fees and charges for Schedule E for the 911 farming initiative. And bylaw number 60 is being a bylaw to appoint signing authorities for the official financial affairs for the town, respectfully asking for first and second readings, and if appropriate, third and final.
2 readings. Councilor Tony, Councilor Aldenhoff. Any questions or comments? All in favor? Opposed, if any? That's carried. Then 3 readings in order. Moved by Councilor Houston, Councilor Jobin, support. All in favor? Opposed, if any? That is carried. Any unfinished business, members of council? New business? No new business. Then I need a, sorry. Oh, it's too late. No, next week. No, go ahead. Sorry about that. Got to get used to these hybrid situations here. You got to find your voice But anyway, go ahead.
There we go. Good evening, Mr. Mayor and council. And through your worship, I would just like to share some information regarding 2 upcoming COVID-19 pop-up vax clinics that will be taking place at Tecumseh Arena. The first will be tomorrow, July 27th, and the next will be Wednesday, August 3rd. So the following week. So back-to-back Wednesdays, we'll be hosting the vax clinics here at Tecumseh Arena. Both clinics will take place in the Horwood Room. Both will be starting at 9 a.m. and running till 3 p.m.
All right, well, thanks for that. If I would have known that, I would have my appointment at the arena. Okay, well, thank you for that. And I'm sure we'll have that on our website and certainly a release to let our citizens know that their 4th boosters are going to be a 3rd or 4th will be available right here in the town. So that's good news. Thank you, Mr. Palmer. Any further new business? Councilor Jobin.
Just would like to wish you and your wife a very happy anniversary. Cheers.
Thank you very much. Big barn. Yep, there you go. Yeah. Okay, if no further new business, we did the confirmatory bylaw. No, not yet. I should call it. Yep. We need to confirm the proceedings of our meeting this evening. Move 3 readings, Councilor Altenhoff, Councilor Tonio. Thank you. All in favor? Opposed, if any? That is carried. Any notices of motion moving forward? Hearing none. Then our next meeting will be Tuesday, August 9th. We have a 4:30 public council meeting, ZBA of 4155 Manning Road. 5 p.m. public council meeting, OPA, and our CIP policies. At 5:30, public council meeting, our ZBA at 6750 Malden Road. And at 6 p.m., public council meeting, amendment to town zoning bylaws for additional residential units. And 7 p.m., our regular council meeting. So if no further business, members of council, adjournment is in order. Councillor Altenhoff and Councillor Tonio, all in favor? Opposed, if any? That is carried. Thank you very much, members of council, and certainly our viewing audience. And as always, thank you to our administration. And so with that, bid you good night. Thank you.